Hi, my name's George Manuel. My grandfather is George Manuel, who was a very prominent Indigenous leader, and today I'm going to go visit him. Before I forget, he really likes canned salmon, so I'm going to bring him a few jars. Chase is a small town in the interior of BC. My grandfather, George Manuel, grew up on the Nisga'a Reservation, which is the same reservation I grew up on. I mostly want to talk to my grandfather about his values and see how his values were transferred over to me. My grandfather is George Manuel, and he was a very prominent Indigenous leader, and especially back when Trudeau Sr. was Prime Minister, and he was trying to pass the White Paper, which was trying to take away our Indigenous title and rights.
Expand the powers that you have so as we can control our fishing rights, so as we can control our hunting rights, so as we can control education.
He was very prolific during that time. He even traveled around the world. He was very much about the people, you know, talking with the people and communicating with them. And so I remember hearing that, like, if there was some issue that our people were dealing with, he would actually go to like an elder's house, say, and he would sit down with them and have like a really long discussion. And he would, you know, because a lot of the times these issues are in these really political documents that are very dense and hard to understand. But he really understood the language and the wording of these documents and issues, that he would, you know, talk for hours to an elder or anybody really, just the people. He would go meet with them and just, you know, try to explain to them in really simple terms, like, this is what this meant and this is what this means. And I think that's one thing I learned from him too, is that it was really, you know, like, as a leader, especially an Indigenous leader, it's really about the people. You know, everything you do, and it's for the future generations. I think he was a little bit more than a politician in that, because I feel like politicians, they say whatever they can to get the people on their side or get the votes. but then once they get in, they don't really follow through on their promises. And for me, he was something more than that. He really understood the issues. He understood, I'm pretty sure he was like a politician at some point, and then he realized that you can't really make changes from the inside in that way that politicians try to do. Once you get inside and start getting into those circles, you kind of lose yourself. You can't really like fight for the issues and stuff. You become like a little, like almost like a cog in the machine, as opposed to somebody who's really able to make the changes. So that's where I think he starts to become more than just a politician, where he didn't want to just do it just to keep a job or just to get the votes and not follow through on his promises. He really wanted to fight for Aboriginal title and rights and what that really meant, and really, really be a leader for the people. Often hear that he was very busy. Like, he was pretty much like always on the road, and because his job was and his career choice was very demanding. I think it's important to me to visit because it's been so long for me. I think the last time I visited him, I was in my teens, and it's always good to kind of try to keep up and see how things are. I think for me, I'm feeling pretty good, about this trip, because I feel like it's important to me in learning about who I am really as an Indigenous person. So this was the first time I actually met my grandfather. I was probably about a teenager, and he passed away before I was born, so I never got to actually meet him or spend any time with him. But I brought some salmon for him. This is my grandmother, and she also passed away before I was born. And I also have some salmon for her as well, too. The drive back was very reflective for me. I had more questions left unanswered. So everything we see here is tapes and photos of my grandfather. Now on these tapes are his speeches, and I was in charge of digitizing a lot of this stuff here. With these tapes, I just had a little tape recorder, and then I plugged it into the computer, and I used some software to record. And I remember sitting there with the headphones and just going through every single tape and just hearing his speeches. You know, I'd be sitting there for like hours. And it was very impactful in my life at that time to hear his words, because a lot of his values start to come through in his speeches and what he's fighting for. And so even if the photos and everything here, I was in charge of digitizing most of these. And so I was going through and seeing all the places he was traveling to and everything he was doing at the time. And so for me, that was really when I first started to learn about who my grandfather was as a person. Because, you know, I heard the odd story here and there from other family members. But I think for me, this was really the first time I really started to get to know my grandfather. The reason why I was digitizing everything is my mom, George Manuel, she wanted to make a narrative film about his life. And so she wanted to be able to get the story right for everything that he did, when he did everything. And so I helped digitize a lot of this stuff. And so, you know, I went through pretty much everything, if not like most of it. I was probably in like my late teens, early 20s when I started to go through it. And so I didn't really have like a very clear idea on like the big picture of all the struggles we were going through. And so it started to impact me on you know, how I started to see things on being an Indigenous person. And a lot of these speeches and photos were really starting to shape my values and what I felt was important. And a lot of this stems from my grandfather and me learning about him, hearing his words, seeing his life journey. I've often wondered how my grandfather's values could even transfer to me. For me, the biggest thing was, how would I even know? I've never met him, and he was such a prominent figure in fighting for Indigenous rights, for our rights. The biggest realization I've had throughout this journey is that our family shapes who we all are. It is who we are and what we become.